What
All
do we have?
right.
60 last?
Live.
Good, sorry.
Say again, Jim?
We had 60 last night. Was that the number?
Yeah, right around there.
Okay.
All right, we are live on YouTube. And so it'll be there recorded for people to find. Afterwards, if you missed something, you can go back and watch it. Or if you weren't here last night, you can go back and find that. Just a couple more minutes. And we do have, well, I was about to say we have one person watching on YouTube, but that's me. So it's no great accomplishment. Hopefully people have been stewing about rules and they have a lot of good questions to add to the chat. And we will have a live question and answer at the end. So if you want to stick around, we'll talk about rules until you're all satisfied and need to go to bed. And just a reminder, we do have our mechanics clinic, umpire mechanics on the field at Mountain View Little League, McKelvey Park and Mountain View tomorrow, 1:30 in the afternoon. But we'll go over that too. All right, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to get started. So people will continue to be added, but welcome to night number 2 here at District 44, our rules clinic, the annual event where you get to review all the Little League rules, get yourself ready for the season. Again, our instructors are me, Mark Teagle, the umpire-in-chief for District 44, and redshirt umpire Jim Molaris, who is a District 44 redshirt umpire, staff umpire. And we're going to do a quick review of what we did last night. But first, a reminder of our Zoom protocols. Keep your own video off. Your camera should be turned off and you should be muted. There's just too many people on this meeting to be able to accommodate people talking while we go, but we do encourage you to put your questions into the chat and Jim and I will monitor that, but there are others who can probably answer the questions. And so feel free to do that as we go along. We're going to have some scenarios like we did last night where you will get a chance to vote. Maybe there'll be cases of multiple choice, or it could be catch, no catch, or fair foul, those kinds of things. And so we'll do that live just to add a little of an interactive part to the presentation tonight. So what we covered last night, we covered the new rules that are there for 2023, included play calling bans on the arm of players, adults warming up pitchers, some changes to the mercy rule and the intentional walk rules. We talked about equipment and what makes equipment legal. We talked about pitching and the pitchers. We talked about batting, especially we're talking about continuous batting order, legal position in the batter's box. We didn't really cover thrown bats, and we can talk about that maybe if we have time at the end. We talked about the definitions of ball strike, foul ball, foul tip, and intentional walk. We talked about bunts, fair balls, foul balls, catch, no catch, the infield fly rule, and local Little League rule options. So tonight, we're going to start out by talking about runners. And so when the batter puts the ball into play, they become a runner, or maybe from a previous play, you're going to have runners starting at the bases. And so we're going to talk about situations concerning the runners. We have a thing called a courtesy runner that's permitted for the catcher and or the pitcher of record when there are two outs. We talked about this a little bit last night, but that is only for the pitcher and the catcher and the ones who were in the game when the team was last on defense. That's what means the catcher or pitcher of record, the ones that are listed in the scorebook as that pitcher. You can't anticipate a pitching change or a catching change to prepare for that courtesy runner. It has to be a player currently not in the batting lineup. If you're batting 9 or with continuous batting order, you use the player that made the last out. We also have a thing in Little League called special pinch runner. That only happens when you are batting 9. And then you can use a player that is not in the lineup, and they can be utilized as a special pinch runner for any offensive player. You don't have anybody not in the lineup when you're using continuous batting order. So that's why that is not a part of what you're doing. We have also a runner's lane, and this only is the last half of the distance between home and first. And it is a 3-foot wide box, including the lines. And it starts at in the 60-foot field at the 30-foot line. In the big field, it would be at 45 feet. So the runner's lane is to protect the fielder receiving the throw at first base. It's not created to protect the thrower. And in order for it to be called, there must be a throw, and it must be a quality throw. In the umpire's judgment, did the position of the runner by running outside of the runner's lane interfere with the ability of the person at first base? Doesn't have to be the first baseman, could be another defensive player. Does it interfere with them receiving a quality throw? If it is a throwaway over their head, that's not a quality throw. You can't have runner's lane interference on that play. Look at where the feet can be in terms of the runner's lane. I think we have a slide for that. Oh, well, here's the other information. It's an immediate dead ball. The batter runner is out. Runners return to their time of pitch base. It's treated like any other interference. So the lines are part of the lane. And so if you have both feet on the lines or inside the lines, you are in the runner's lane. But if you have one or more feet completely outside the runner's lane, then you are in danger of having runner's lane interference. Now, if the runner is avoiding a fielder, fielding a batted ball, then it's okay for them to be outside that lane. And it only comes into play if there's a ball that is going to be thrown from behind where his position or her position would interfere with the receiving of a quality throw toward first base. All right, so they're not required to run in the runner's lane in any other circumstance. So here is a play.
Everybody out. Jeremiah Dominguez bunts. Fielded by Lane. Throws to first off the glove. That's a violation of running. Everybody will be sent back, and that takes a run off the board. So Dominguez will be out as he was running in the field of play, nowhere to throw.
All right, so you see in this play that his feet are not in that runner's lane. He's not to the right of the foul line, not within that box. And there's a quality throw that hits that runner outside the lane. It would have been caught by the first baseman. Likely it was a quality throw. And so what they didn't enforce immediately was the immediate dead ball, but they did get it right in the end. They sent the runners back to their time of pitch bases, which was first and second in this case. So that's the ruling on that runner's lane interference. We have also a concept of the base path versus the baseline. And this is from Rule 7. Runners can run anywhere they want, and they define their base path. And it can be a nice loop like this one is shown. It could be a zigzag. As long as they're not trying to avoid a tag, they're fine. There's no requirement for them to run on a straight line between bases, between first and second, for instance. Now, the baseline is different than the base path. That's established when a fielder attempts to tag the runner. At that point, it's a straight line from the runner to the base they're attempting to reach, either advancing or retreating. And so at this point, the runner can be called for being out of the baseline by going more than 3 feet away from that baseline to avoid a tag. So the key thing there is there has to be a tag that's being avoided, and that's a fielder with the ball who's in a position to tag. And then if that person runs outside that baseline, they are out, not at that point where they get more than 3 feet away in the umpire's judgment from the fielder making the tag. Other than that, their base path is up to them. Now, we've all seen rundowns, and during that rundown play, when you've got the ball coming in and going back and forth, the baseline may change. In fact, every time they change direction, they're creating potentially a new baseline, certainly a new base path. And so when that tag happens, as it just did from the first baseman, now from the shortstop by second, now another player at first, when that defensive player has the ball and is in a position to make a tag, the baseline responsibility of that runner is a straight line to the base. If they deviate more than 3 feet from that, they should be called out. And then again, the person who has the right of way on fielding a batted ball is the fielder. So the base runner is going to go around this player. This is not avoiding a tag. This is avoiding a fielder playing a batted ball. So that's not considered going outside the baseline. They are going around them to give them the space to field the ball. Now, there's at some point, it becomes, depending on when the fielder has the ball, if they have the ball and they're turning and they're starting to move toward that runner, at some point, it's going to become a tag play. But initially, they're allowed to give that runner room to go around. All right, we're going to talk about a force play. When the batter becomes a runner, that the runners on the bases, if they're the next base up, they're going to lose their right to occupy that base. They are forced to advance. That's why we call it a force play. And so that force may be removed during a play or restored during a play. So, for instance, if they make a play on the batter runner at first base, the runner coming from first into second is no longer forced, and they would have to be tagged in order for the out to occur. So it's up to the umpires to be mindful of whether or not the force has been removed by the preceding or by the following runner having been put out. So let's watch what this first baseman does with this batted ball. And we're going to look again at this play at second base. Fielder has his foot on the bag and he makes the catch before the runner gets there. But is that a force play at second? It is not, because of what happened at first. The batter runner was out, and so this becomes a tag play. And whether or not the umpire was thinking of that, he made the out call. But it, to me, looks like the tag happened after the foot came in to the base. There's also a little bit of a kerfuffle in that play where the umpire pointed foul instead of pointing fair. And then he quickly changed his call, pointed at fair, and the rest of the play continued. So just be clear. You need to be mindful whether the force has been removed. A Little League specific rule is the runner leaving early. And this is a long rule, lots of examples in Rule 7.13 to find it there. But here are the requirements. Once the pitcher is in contact with the pitcher's plate, in possession of the ball, and the catcher's in the catcher's box, ready to receive delivery of the ball, facing the pitcher with their helmet on, and you don't have to be in the squat. The catcher is there ready. That at that point, the base runners may not leave their bases until the ball has been delivered and has reached the batter. This takes place only once the continuous action of an ongoing play has stopped. So pitcher going and stepping on the rubber does not stop continuous action of the prior play. Sometimes they act like it does. For instance, a walked batter can just continue to go all the way to second base because he didn't stop. That was continuous action. They can, of course, make a play on him once he crosses first. He is in jeopardy. But there's a lot of confusion about when the leaving early is kind of put into place. But what the rule says, you need a pitcher and a catcher ready to go. And at that point, if the runner stopped, they cannot start again. And they are then required to maintain contact with the base until the next play, which would be the pitch reaching the batter. So in leaving early, if one runner leaves early, it affects everyone. So if one runner leaves early, then everybody's going to be put back as far as they can. It's a little bit of a complicated rule, but it will become more clear as we go through the next slide. Two different things can happen. Either the batter does not hit the ball or he does hit the ball. So on a pitch that is not put into play, we let the play continue. And if the play is made, the runner is out, that out stands. If they cheated and left early and they still got thrown out, we're not going to reward that. But if the play is made and the runner is safe, the runners must return to the base occupied before the pitch. And even if there isn't a play, that runner who left early has to go back. If there were multiple runners stealing on the play, they all have to go back to the base where they were before the pitch was thrown. And any outs that happen or the outs would stand if the out is there, but there are no outs just for leaving early. You still have to make a play on that runner in order to get an out. It's different than what happens in softball. So now if the batter hits the ball, the base runners are allowed to continue. We're not stopping the play on any of these once we see the running or the leaving early. We let the play continue to its conclusion, and then we call time and we make the base awards as needed. So if a play is made, the runners are out, the out's going to stand. And we just continue on from there. If no runners are out, the runners must return to their original base or the bases, original base or bases, or to the unoccupied base nearest the one that was left. So the umpire will determine the base value of a hit ball. So for instance, very simple one is if there's a runner at first and the batter hits a single, but the person from first makes it all the way to third, they're going to go back to second because you're going to move them back to the unoccupied base nearest to the one that was left. So here's the situation. Bases are loaded, and one of these runners is going to leave early.
Another 0-2 pitch in the dirt, breaking for the plate, and safe at home plate. I think that's what they're saying.
There's a red flag, and that's what you would use to indicate that a runner left early.
Red flag over there on first
Watch
base.
the runner at first. He's off the bag before the ball gets to the batter.
To decide to change the call, but I can't imagine they would. Well, it's absolutely the right call too. Very much so. Absolutely.
So in this situation, the ball was not put in play. There were no outs made. And so all the runners go back to their original bases, which it takes a run off the board. And the runner on third base is probably going to be a little upset that his teammate robbed him of a chance to score that run by leaving early. But it's an attempt from Little League to level the playing field so that, on the small field where you don't have leading off, you try to make it as fair as possible for everyone. So there's a whole bunch of different situations in the rule book, go through them, but
We got a good question in the chat here from George. It says, an example, we just say we have R1 and R1 leaves early on a batted ball, and they try to make a play at second base and the runner's safe. What happens in that situation?
Yeah, thank you, George, for that question. And this is one of the weaknesses of this rule, but by rule, everybody would be safe because the value of the hit or the error was a single. Everybody then gets to move up. If they didn't make the play, they didn't make the play. Now, if the batter runner had been put out on that play, they would move the runner back to his original base. But in this situation, they got away with it, and that's just one kind of loophole that's in this leaving early rule. Nothing you can do about it. All right, we're going to talk about. I kept talking too long, Jim. Let's have you jump in.
All right, well, I'm going to have one slide before you take over on obstruction, but base awards on a thrown ball out of play. It's two bases on a throw on a batted ball. Two bases. If it's the first play by an infielder, then it's two bases from the time of the pitch. So oftentimes what you'll see is a base, your batter runner is going to put the ball in play in the infield. They throw it out of into the dugout. They don't make a play on that batter. They're only awarded second base because at time of pitch, they were at home plate. So they've got the two base award to move them to second base. If it's a second play by an infielder or the first play by an outfielder, then it's two bases from the time of the throw. So this might be a little bit different here where, especially on a double play attempt on the infield, where the first play is going to be at second base, when they go to make that second throw over to first base, Now it's the second of these two options here. That's the second play by an infielder. Also, the first throw by an outfielder, if they airmail it into dead ball territory from the outfield, then it's 2 bases from the time of the throw. So if the batter runner has already achieved first base and have rounded first base, and an outfielder throws the ball out of play, you're going to award that batter runner who's already achieved first base, you're going to award that batter runner third base on that throw from the outfield.
And just a quick note, that's at the time of the throw, not when it goes out of play, but you have to kind of go back to think, when did that throw happen and where were the runners at the time of the throw?
Yeah, and sometimes the home plate umpire is going to have the best view of that because they have the entire field in front of them. So help out your partner who's out there on the bases to make sure the base awards are done correctly. Now, throws by the pitcher. It's 1 base on a pitch ball or a pickoff play when the pitcher's in contact with the pitcher's plate. If they step off and then try to do a pickoff and throw the ball out of play, then it's a 2 base award. We don't see that a lot in minors and majors, the pickoff attempts. So, but if you work the upper level games, then you will see these pickoff attempts a lot more. That's base awards. Now we're going to move on to interference and obstruction, and we're going to start with the difference between interference and obstruction. Mark, it's back to you, I think.
Okay. And just one other thing about base awards, if the ball actually goes out of play on a pitch, like if it bounces off the catcher's shin guards and goes all the way to the dugout, goes out of play, or if it gets lodged in the catcher or the umpire's equipment. I've seen balls end up in the umpire's ball bag or behind the catcher's chest protector. Because it was a pitch, base runners only get 1 base. So that's analogous to a pickoff throw from the pitching plate that goes out of play, as opposed to the pitcher having stepped off and becoming like any other infielder, and that being 2 bases at that point. All right. So the batter has the right of way to swing at the pitch without being interfered with. That's called catcher's interference. Once the batter hits the pitch, the fielder has the right of way to field the batted ball without being interfered with by either the batter or the runner. So that's when the fielder has the right of the way. And the runner has the right of way to advance without being obstructed. That's fielder obstruction. So we have interference versus obstruction. And usually it is the defense that obstructs and the offense that interferes. But in terms of catcher's interference, that's when the defense is interfering. So let's talk about obstruction. A fielder who is not in possession of the ball impedes the progress of any runner. And it can be a fake tag. And we talked about who has the right to the baseline. So if that fielder is there and they don't have the ball and they impede that runner, that's obstruction. And that contact is not necessary if the fielder has to change direction or they're slowed down by the presence of that fielder without the ball. That can be obstruction. The fake tag often would happen at second base. Let's say a runner is thinking about a triple and the shortstop decides to be cute. They pretend like the ball has come in and they make like they're going to tag, and they cause that runner to slow down or even go into a slide. That would be a fake tag, and that's considered obstruction in Little League. So in Major League Baseball, there's an extra phrase in there. So it says that if he is fielding the ball or when he already has possession of the ball, he can, unless those 2 things are satisfied, they cannot block the pathway of the runner. Little League took away the fielding the ball. and basically said you either have the ball or you don't. So if you don't have the ball, you might be guilty of obstructing if you impede that runner. But if you do have the ball, you have the right to be there and you will not be called for obstruction. So it's pretty black and white, but it's still a lot of umpire judgment that's involved in making this call. So we have two different types, and they're called type A and type B, and they're named after the rules. So 7.06A is type A obstruction. And that means that the play is being made on the obstructed runner or on the batter runner being obstructed before touching first base. If that is the case, it's an immediate dead ball. Time, that's obstruction. And then you award the base, and you are going to go at least one base beyond the base that was last legally touched. The umpire has to use judgment in the placement of other runners. Where would they have gotten had the obstruction not occurred? And that's kind of umpire fantasy baseball, where you have to think, okay, what would have happened had this not happened? Type A obstruction often happens on rundowns and things like that, where they're making a play on the runner who is obstructed. Let's watch this video.
Caught between first and second. They throw home. Trent Grisham is in a rundown. Grisham trying to get to the plate, and he's going to be sacked down. Grisham scores. Contact between Grisham and the catcher, but he.
All right, so at that point, that catcher did not have the ball, and the runner had to deviate their course, whether or not there was contact. And this time it was just a little bit of a brush, but the runner had to change course. And in the umpire's judgment, he obstructed that runner. The ball was immediately dead, and that runner was awarded the next base, which was home plate, and he scored. Any other runners would be placed where the umpires thought they would be without the obstruction, and probably like at second and third in this case. So that is on a live ball. Okay, we've got a situation here where we're going to be voting.
All right, I'm gonna roll our video.
Standing with a diving catch to left, and this
Oh,
ball
more
is
video.
really hard, and Chris Andrews can't get over there in time. But watch it right there. Cut that ball off, and then make a perfect throw to the relay man, Chris Ferdinand, who throws a strike to J.R. Osmond, who you are not getting
when
by
he
this
catches
wall.
it.
Yep.
You could argue there was no lane to go there.
All right. So we have two choices here. Choice A would be the runner is out at home on that play, and then choice B, the runner is awarded home on the catcher's obstruction. Let's go ahead and vote on that. Runner's out, or if you think that catcher was in the way of that runner before he got the ball, made the runner slow up, slow down, was impeded in any way. And we've got a lot of folks voting there. Just kind of go there. We'll end the poll, share the results. 89% of you would have called obstruction on that play, and I think that's the right call. That runner was already having to slow down. He didn't have a way to score, and that catcher did not have the ball until after that runner was already starting his slide. So I think that would be an obstruction, and that's type A obstruction. And so the immediate dead ball, and award the runners wherever you think they would have gotten. The other type of obstruction is type B, and this is when there's no play being made on the obstructed runner. It's a delayed dead ball. You don't call time right away. You let the play go out, and then you award bases at the end based on what you think would have happened had the obstruction not occurred. So you're going to say you have penalties, if any. It may be that the play happened just the way it would have. You don't have to nullify the act of obstruction. But if an obstructed runner advances beyond the base, which the umpire thought they would have awarded them, they're doing it at their own risk. So it's not an automatic, you get the next base if it's type B. They're not the player being played on when the obstruction happens. So we've got, I think, an example of this. So this is the Little League Midwest Region Final, bottom of the sixth. Home is batting, they're down 1. They have runners at first and second. And I'm going to have you watch what the first base umpire does.
A rocket, but they do not care at this point. This one hit well. This game is going to be tied for the third in time. They got it. What they get? Oh, wow.
Runner at third was called out.
We got it.
First base umpire stopped everything.
So what?
There's where the obstruction happens. The umpire sees it. And then as the play continues.
The video's not going to roll again, Mike.
Okay. So basically the runner from first, after the ball gets by the outfielder, tries to make it to third, and they're out by half a step. But in the umpire's judgment at first base, and it's a young lady who used to live in this area and now is in the Midwest, and she stepped up and made the call, big money call, that runner was safe. And so this inning did not end, and they played on because of that obstruction. So she steps in, calls time, says there was obstruction, and that runner should be safe at third. So that's nullifying the results of the obstruction, the type B. All right, we're going to have a vote here. And let's watch this play. Where do you place the batter runner and R1?
Really good punt. Nobody at first. Runner, though, is down in front of him. And now he's going to try to go to second base. And he's okay there. I didn't see what happened to Drew Hill. If he ran into a fielder, perhaps? Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. They've run into RJ Vashi, so he went down. I think the umpire immediately made a call. But the play continued. You can see the first base umpire getting involved. But yeah, he ran right into him. Vashi went in to try to field the ball.
All right. So you have two choices on this. Batter runner stays at first. R1 stays at second base. Batter runner is awarded second base. R1 is awarded third base. Reminder on the play, the throw went down the line, and the batter runner was ready to run all the way to second. So A or B are going to be your choices. All right. Our results are in, and 82% said B, the award of second and third on this play, and I think that's right. The way that play went out, everybody would have moved up 2 bases. And so, you just have to be aware of where these runners are. You're watching your runners and you see obstruction, especially at minors. There's a lot of obstruction. That's type B. Another example of this would be a first baseman that's standing on the bag on a ball hit to the outfield. That runner has to divert around them. could have maybe been a double without that obstruction being there, and they have to stop up. You can point, say that's obstruction at the end of the play, you make awards based on what that is. Maybe that's just back to first. That's where you think they would have gotten. But if you think they would have made it to second without that obstruction, go ahead, call time, say that we had obstruction at first base. I'm awarding the batter runner second base. Another place where obstruction type B happens, ball hit to the outfield, runner from second and shortstop or third base is in their path without the ball. And they're slowed down, they're stopped, prevented from going on. Be aware of that and think about where that runner would have gone without that happening.
All right. So we're going to move on to interference now. Before we do, Mark, do you see a green line kind of slash through what's on the screen?
I do not.
You do not. Okay, it's just me.
I just see interference.
All right, perfect. The first kind of interference that we're going to talk about is catcher's interference. And that's when the catcher interferes with the batter's swing. It's a delayed dead ball, and the batter's awarded first base if the ball is not put in play. Now, if the ball is put in play, the batter reaches first base, and all other runners advance at least one base, the interference is then ignored. You don't have to call it out or anything. Once again, it's a delayed dead ball, so you don't have to say anything. If the batter doesn't reach first base safely, though, then you will call time and impose the penalty for catcher's interference. The manager does have the option of taking the penalty or the play, because there may be catcher's interference on the batter, but they score a winning run on it. So the coach may want to ignore, the manager may want to ignore the penalty for the interference and just take the run and win the game. Let's watch a video here, and we're going to do a vote on this. Let me go back one slide. Look at these again. Delayed dead ball. If the batter reaches first base and all other runners advance at least one base, then the interference is ignored. All right. Those are the key elements of the rule. Let's watch this play here and get ready to vote. We got runners on second and third.
Wilson on the ground, nice and easy. Peterson will take a shot and make the play. Brandon Woodruff, wait a minute. We got catcher's interference here. Yeah, clearly. I mean, that.
Yeah, you could see that the batter almost took the catcher's glove completely off as he hit it with his bat. So we have some options here. The batter in A, the batter is awarded first base, and R2 and R3 are allowed to advance. Batters awarded first base, and R2 and R3 must return to their previous bases. And when I say in the first one, if they're allowed to advance, they can advance all the way to home plate. In C, the batter is out at first, and the half inning is over. So let's see what we got in the vote. All right, so we got a good, want to go ahead and share those results, Mark?
Yep. Here we go.
All right, so we're about 50-50 on A and B. All right, so in our play here, the batter was thrown out at first base. So that's a delayed dead ball. So the batter is going to be awarded first base. And R2 and R3, they're going to be returning to their previous bases. They have to go back to second and third. That runner from third is not going to be scoring. So that's going to be actually B. So it's a delayed dead ball. Remember, R2 and R3 did not all advance safely one base. I think we had 2 outs in that scenario as well.
Yeah, so had there been only one out,
Yeah.
then you would have had, the manager would have had a choice whether
Yeah.
to allow the play or to take the interference penalty.
I forgot that one important element about that. Already had 2 outs. All right, thanks, Mark. All right, now we're going to move on to the runner interfering with a fielder. And as Mark mentioned earlier, the batters and runners must avoid fielder who is attempting to field a batted ball or intentionally interferes with a thrown ball. Can't do that either. So you have to avoid that fielder trying to field the ball. That's an immediate dead ball. If the batter interferes, the batter's out and runners are returned to their bases. If a runner interferes, that runner is out. The batter is awarded first base and all other runners are returned to their prior base. And converging fielders, if you have multiple fielders that can make a play on a ball, you have to choose, it's your judgment as to which fielder has the best opportunity to field that ball. That run or that fielder is protected, but not the second fielder that may have an opportunity to field the ball. And I think in this example, we're going to have that displayed to us here where we have converging fielders. Let's see how this one plays out.
Left and having to reach over, so maybe setting up more down the middle helps. Big bouncer, tough play. Gregorius has it go up. Another look, high chopper. Gregorius, the only thing you can think about is barehanding, but that doesn't matter. It was really the collision with Headley who was legitimately trying to get there to make the play. Lindor at the last minute tries to adjust, but it's incumbent on.
So there's clearly interference there. As long as you have chosen that you're protecting the third baseman. For me, if I'm the umpire, I'm protecting the third baseman on that. He's actually headed towards first base. He's got a good chance of fielding that ball. He's got a better chance of making a better throw to first base than the shortstop, who's got an off-angle throw to first base. So to me, I'm going to protect the third baseman. That's who the runner collided with. That runner's out on him immediately. The batter is going to get awarded first base, by the way.
Yeah, on that play. Now, if you thought that the shortstop is the one making the play, then it's on the third baseman to get out of the way because he would be guilty of obstruction on this play if he's not the protected fielder.
So in the chat, we have, how do you differentiate between obstruction and runner interference? Well, in this situation, if there's only one fielder making a play on the ball, then and if there's a collision, then that's going to be interference because the fielder has priority. Not the base runner has to try to avoid that fielder making that play on the ball. If you have converging fielders, you have to pick which fielder you believe in your judgment has the better chance of making a play on the ball, and you protect that fielder. And so if there's a collision with that fielder, and as in this example, I'm protecting the third baseman, the collision was with the third baseman. So I have interference, the runner's out. If I'm protecting the shortstop in this example, though, that means the third baseman has to try to stay out of the way of the runner. And if there's if he's obstructing the runner in a collision like this would be clear obstruction, then you award the runner third base. And runner's baseline, once again, the runner's not out if their action is to avoid, they're not out of the baseline if they're clearly trying to avoid interfering with the fielder making a play on the ball. Now, runner being hit by a batted ball. lot of rules come into play on this. But they're not runner interference rules. They're runner hit by a batted ball rule. It's the responsibility of the runner to not get hit by the batted ball. It's immediate dead ball. The runner's called out for being hit by the batted ball, and all the runners have to return to their time of pitch base. And the batter is awarded first base in this example, or in this situation. Now there's an exception. It's a bit complicated. If the batted ball is deflected off a fielder and the batted ball goes through or by a fielder and touches a runner immediately in back of that fielder, and no other fielder had a chance to make a play on the ball. Didn't say that very well, did I? If the ball goes, the runner's not out. If the batted ball is first deflected off a fielder, or the batted ball goes through or by a fielder and touches a runner immediately in back of the said fielder. However, if there is an exception to that exception, if another fielder could have had a chance on the ball that goes through or by a fielder, not the deflected ball, but through or by the fielder, then the runner shall be called out. So in this picture here, the ball has gone by the first fielder and then hits the runner in back of that fielder, but there's another fielder immediately in back of the runner who could have made a play on that ball. So in that situation, you can call that runner out for being hit by the ball. I don't think I've ever called it in my 10 years of umpiring, so it's a rare exception. Let's watch this video of the first exception now, where it's a deflected ball.
Took something off it. He rolls it to first. It hit the base runner. And we see here the first baseman, Forrest King, goes after the ball, goes past him, and game on. I just wasn't sure if it hit the runner or the glove.
It's not super clear on that, but the ball does come off of the first baseman. It does angle a little bit differently after it gets past him, and then the ball runs up into the runner. In that situation, we don't have a runner being hit by a batted ball. He's protected because it's deflected off of the first baseman. All right, we're going to have a vote on this. Remember, it's the responsibility of the runner not to get hit by a batted ball. Let's watch this video.
Drafted and signed by the Phillies in 2008. That hits the runner. And
All right. A lot going on that play. We got a runner hit by a ball and maybe a play being made at first base. All right. So our vote is R1 is safe at first, since the defense was able to get the batter out on a force at first. R1 is out for interference and the batter is out on a force at first base. And C, R1 is out on interference. The ball is dead and the batter is awarded first base.
All right, good job. A lot of people jumping in on this poll question.
I like this, yeah. Going in the poll.
Go ahead and close that off. And just about everybody said C.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's immediate dead ball. The runner's called out on interference and the batter is awarded first base. The other one's right, immediate dead ball. They can't turn a double play on that batter runner trying to achieve first base. The batter runner is just awarded first base. Only get one out. By the way, whenever there's an interference on the offense, you always get an out for the interference. All right, runner interference on a thrown ball. On a thrown ball, a runner is out only if he or she intentionally interferes with a throw. And a double play can be called if you thought that maybe a second out could have been had on that play. An example might be R1 is going into second base and sticks their arm out to try to swat the ball down on a double play attempt to try to get the batter runner first. There, that's an intent. You can get that double play on that. So there, we're going to see some examples of unintentionally being hit by balls and intentionally being hit by balls. There, we've got no intent to be hit with a thrown ball here.
Bouncing ball to Sherrill with a good stop, goes to second. They get, no, the ball gets dropped. Oh, what a break for the Indians. As Goldie plays it. A play at the plate. They hit the game is running on his way from the.
I'm going to actually go back here 1 second here. Remember, there is no runner's lane on any other base line other than first base. So this runner may have added an intention of trying to be disruptive to the throw from third base, but it's not interference. What he's doing here is legal, and he doesn't do anything with his body that actually tries to hit the ball. So that's all legal. Now we have clear intent to be hit with a throw on this next one.
This gets away from Murphy, backed up by Walters. They got him hung up. He dropped it once, and he put his helmet into the.
That's the hard way to be called for interference, but that is interference. He moved his body in the direction of the throw. He moved his helmet in the direction of the throw. And so that is interference and an out. All right, batter interference. Batter is out for illegal action when interfering with the catcher's fielding or throwing by stepping out of the batter's box, making a movement that hinders the catcher's action at home plate or the catcher's attempt to make a play on a runner, or failing to make a reasonable effort to vacate a congested area when there's a throw to home plate and there's time for the batter to move away. So 3 different scenarios there. It's a delay dead ball. If the runner's retired, then you ignore the interference. Otherwise, the batter's out and runners return to their original bases. We're going to see some different plays here. Each of those 3 types of interference, we're going to see a video on each one of them. Stepping out. Interfered with the catcher's attempt to make a throw to third base. Getting in the way of the catcher, trying to make a play on that bunt. So that's the second example.
Baseline.
Yeah, poor Keith there. He did get in the way of the catcher making a toss to the pitcher coming in to make the play on the runner coming in from third base. So Keith did interfere with that play at home plate. All right. So if the situation is that you've got, let me go back to the here. If the batter or runner has just been put out, impedes a following play being made on a runner, the runner should be declared out for interference by a teammate. So we see this a lot when there are two strikes on the batter, and then they interfere on the next pitch. That's a strike. And so the batter's out on strike 3, and then there's an attempt to be made on another player, base runner. And so you go and hook the base runner for the interference. You always get an out with an interference. The batter in this example is going to be out on the strikeout. Let's watch the video on this. We got 2-2 Canada.
But on the backswing, that caught Bobby Wilson.
All right, so David Ortiz, he's out on strike 3 on his backswing. His bat hits the catcher. That's backswing interference. The runner from first is out for teammate interference. So we got 2 outs on that 1 pitch.
All right, Jim, there's a question in the chat that we should deal with. This is from Kevin. Is it okay to leave the box to avoid congestion? I'm assuming that's the batter in the batter's box. And to clarify when they should stay in the box and when they should vacate the box in situations involving the catcher.
Yeah, so it kind of depends. So if it's say a runner stealing from second to third, the only place where the batter's going to have protection is staying in the box. So if the batter in the video we saw, the softball video, the girl was moving out of the box. She got in the way, and so that's, you want to stay in the box. If there's a play around home plate, the batter is in jeopardy of being called for interfering if they don't vacate the area. So if it's a right-handed batter and the ball goes to the first base dugout line, then there's not as much jeopardy there. If the ball goes to the third base line on a right-handed batter and the throw comes in from that side, then there's definitely jeopardy. And so that batter should be vacating the home plate area to an area that they're not going to get hit by the ball coming in from the catcher. Hopefully that clarifies things.
So a good rule of thumb for the batter is if the ball stays with the catcher, then stay in the box. If the ball gets by that catcher, then you need to vacate and you need to not be in the throwing lane of the catcher throwing back to the plate. And so umpires take all that into consideration when they're making a determination of whether there was interference or not. But great question.
Okay, we're gonna vote on a batter interference play here. So option A, batter's out for interfering with the catcher's throw. B, the batter's not out since he is not required to move. All right.
All right, here's our results.
Like about 1/3 going with A, batter's out, and 2/3 going with B. So the answer is actually it's B. The place where they're protected is actually the batter's box in this situation. If they step out of the batter's box and then are hit with a throw, then they're in jeopardy of being called for interference. But the only place that they're protected is the batter's box. And this batter did not move out of the batter's box. He may have shuffled his feet a little bit, but that's all right as long as he's not moving out of the batter's box. The catcher has to work around the batter in the batter's box. All right, nice job, everybody.
All right, we're moving into Rule 7.08, Section A, number 3, which is the must slide or attempt to get around. And this is the so-called must slide rule, but it's not a must slide rule because it's also the attempt to go around rule. So if the fielder has the ball in his or her possession and the fielder is waiting to make the tag, then the runner must either slide or attempt to get around the fielder or retreat to the previous base or give themselves up. If the fielder's there waiting to make the tag and that runner keeps going or tries to bump into them or just tries to go, regardless of what happens, that runner's going to be called out at that point. But if they attempt to go around, even if they don't really get around them, you only rule on that on what happens in terms of the baseball, of what really happens with the play. So you don't have to avoid, you don't have to slide, you just either slide or attempt to go around. But basically that runner is dead to rights and they can be called out in that situation. We encourage the runners to be sliding. All right, so let's watch this. This is not a Little League play, but let's see what happens.
Ground ball to first, and Campbell's coming home, and they're going to have Ryan Howard. Do they?
Now, imagine this is a Little League play.
Ryan just shows his
Did the catcher have the ball and were they waiting to make a tag?
sliding heads up play as well.
Well, maybe just a little ahead, but that runner is making an attempt to go around. And so they satisfied the rule, in my opinion. Another question, had this been a Little League play where you're not allowed to slide head first while advancing? He touches the base first with his hand, seems to be moving toward home head first. But in my judgment, this would be a hook slide where he was sliding with his feet and then got hung up, or the best way to go was forward. He wasn't initially sliding head first. All right, so we don't have a lot of examples of that head first slide or the trying to go around a slide or attempt to go around, but just remember that those things need to be satisfied the requirements of the rule. We're going to talk about appeals. And in Rule 2.0, the one with all the definitions, an appeal is an act of a fielder in claiming a violation of the rules by the offensive team. So here are some examples. Failure to retouch or tag up on a batted fly ball. With the ball in play, failure to touch each base in order while advancing or returning. And after the runner behind them has scored, that runner can't go back to correct the mistake. They can't go back to touch a missed base after they have advanced to and touched the next base. So they have a window to correct it. The umpire is watching. In our clinics, we talk about the base umpire or the plate umpire having responsibility to watch the touches of the base. Did they touch it? Did they? And then that umpire, if they see a missed base, they don't make a call right away. They store that information and wait for a proper appeal. Another opportunity for an appeal is overrunning, oversliding first base and failing to return to the base immediately. So if you are out there and you take your time getting back, at some point you are no longer immediately returning to and touching that base. And then failure to touch home plate and you make no effort to return to home plate. If you enter the dugout, then the catcher can just touch home plate and say that that person missed. So this is what sets up an appeal situation. Any of these things, a failure to retouch, a failure to touch a base. And so these are what the defense has to do to satisfy the requirements of an appeal. You have a window. It has to be made before the next pitch or play or an attempted play. And the ball must be live and in play. So you can't do an appeal if the ball is dead. Often when there's an appeal situation, the first thing the defense does, call timeout. Well, they have to wait for the ball to be back in play before they can get an out on an appeal. And the appeal is itself, the action of that appeal is not to be interpreted as a play or an attempted play. But it needs to be clearly intended as an appeal. A player inadvertently stepping on a base with the ball in hand, that's not obviously an appeal. But say there was a runner at third base and there was a fly ball and that runner scores, they come in and immediately go to third, touch third with the ball in hand. That's an obvious appeal that that runner left before the ball was touched on a fly ball and could be called out on appeal if that were the case. So here are some key steps for your appeal. You need to have the defensive players on the field. So if the third out has already been made, you need to keep those players on the field because there might be an advantageous fourth out in an inning. The rule book talks about that. If the ball is dead, you have to put the pitcher on the mound with the ball and have the umpire put the ball back in play. But if the ball is still in play from previous action, that part is not necessary. The pitcher then, after the ball's put in play, they step off with their pivot foot. And then, but if you step off the wrong way, that's going to be an illegal pitch or a balk, and that's going to be considered a play. They're going to throw to the base, or you're going to tag the runner, tell the umpire what they're appealing. If there's multiple runners, they have to be clear what they are appealing. The ball is live, and runners can advance at their own risk. So if you're appealing at first, that runner from third might take off and they might score on that play. That's the risk you take because that ball is live. But if in the midst of that, the defense gives up on the appeal and they make a play or an attempted play on another runner, then we've voided that opportunity for the appeal. You've lost that window. Here is a really good example of a missed base appeal, and this was in a Western Region game, Hawaii versus Northern California. This is the Petaluma team from just a few years ago. Let's watch, listen to what the coach is saying.
Who scored? Did he miss third? You weren't looking? Did you think he did?
I thought he did.
Who? Which one? Which one? The first guy or the second guy? Which one? The second guy? Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna step off and you're gonna, when he says play, you're gonna step off, you're gonna throw it to Cole, nice and easy, and you're gonna say that the second runner missed the bag.
Did he miss it or not?
So that umpire saw this. They were ready if the appeal got made. You may often see a missed bag, and it's not often that a missed bag and an appeal, a properly done appeal happen on the same play. But in this case, it did, and it really changed the game. But that umpire was ready. He was right on top of that play. Batting out of turn is another one that gets complicated, and there's a whole bunch of examples of different situations. But here's just some key rules of thumb. the proper batter, the terminology here is the batter who should be batting, the improper batter, the player who is batting out of turn, and then a legalized batter when an improper batter becomes a proper batter. So if the improper batter becomes the runner or is retired, the proper or before the improper batter becomes the runner or is retired, the proper batter may come to bat and resume the count. So if the offense catches it before it actually happens, maybe the wrong guy's up, but they catch their mistake and they swap him back in, they just assume the count, that we don't lose those pitches, and they continue. But when an improper batter becomes a runner or is retired, and before the pitch, the first pitch to the next batter of either team, before any player attempted play, if they properly appeal that, it's the proper batter who is declared out. And if anybody advances on the play by the improper batter, by that batted ball, those will be nullified. But if you have a steal that happens before that ball is put in play by the improper batter, those are going to stand. And then when the improper batter becomes a runner, is retired, and a pitch is made, that improper batter becomes the proper batter or the legalized batter, and it becomes legal. And so then the batting order continues from the legalized batter. It's a mess. You need to sit down with the scorekeeper, figure out who should have batted if in fact you had a batting out of turn. But it is the proper batter who is declared out for the improper batter's actions. All right, a section on game management from Jim.
Yep, great. Thanks, Mark. Every game starts with a plate meeting. And it should happen 5 minutes before the scheduled start time. So if you have a 12:30 start time for your game on Saturday, your plate meeting should happen at 12:25. The umpire and umpires and the managers meet. If it's two youth umpires that are umpiring the game, then the game coordinator joins on the field for that, just for the plate meeting. The players, both offense and defense, should all be in the dugout. The offense shouldn't be out on the field, and certainly the pitchers should not be warming up. LEGS is an acronym that the home plate umpire leads the plate meeting, and LEGS is the acronym that they'll want to go through to get through it. L stands for lineups. So you should get a lineup card from first the home team and then the visiting team. And the player's name, not their number, sets the batting order. And a lineup card is required for both the bat nine and continuous batting order. And so it doesn't matter what kind of batting order a league uses, the umpire needs a card for either one. E stands for equipment. It's very simple. You ask each coach, are your players properly and legally equipped to play in accordance with Little League rules? If they give you an answer such as, oh, I sure hope so, last time I checked, that's not sufficient. Just ask the question again. Coach, are your players properly and legally equipped to play in accordance to Little League rules? Make sure you get a yes from them before you then ask the next coach. G stands for ground rules. If you don't know the ground rules, then just have the home manager walk you through the ground rules. And just remind them about good sportsmanship. That's what the S stands for. So LEGS, lineups, equipment, ground rules, and sportsmanship. Should be able to get through this in 2 minutes or less. All right. It should not take long. Don't talk about rules. Assume that everybody knows the rules. just talk about lineups, equipment, ground rules, sportsmanship, wish them good luck, and then get on with the game.
Yeah, just a quick word about ground rules. Some fields have kind of weird home run lines, a yellow line, or maybe a place where the ball could get under a fence, or out of play areas along the sides, camera wells, different things. Just make sure that you know what constitutes a home run, what constitutes a ball out of play. Those are the examples of ground rules that you have.
On a continuous batting order lineup card, you should get something that looks like this. Lists all players in the order they will bat. Once again, it's the name that's important on this, not the number. If somebody writes down the wrong number, you'll correct it. It's the name that matters. And this, when we talk about batting, batting out of turn, it's the name that matters, not the number. You want to make sure that the pitcher and the catcher are designated at the plate meeting. You want to know who you're starting with on the mound and who your catcher is. You want to note any ineligible pitchers. If these haven't been designated for you by the manager, then you as the plate umpire will ask those questions. Who's your pitcher today? Who's your catcher? And you write those on the lineup card. You ask if there are any ineligible pitchers. And with the bat 9 lineup card, you don't need to keep up with the defensive subs. That's on the manager to make sure that the players get their minimum play time, but they do not need to report who's going in and out of the dugout on defense.
Yeah, that's on a continuous batting order lineup.
Yeah, just on continuous batting order. And we'll talk about the bat 9 lineup card now. A little bit different. The starting 9 should be listed on the top with the pitcher and the catcher designated at a minimum. Many times you get all the positions that are designated, but pitcher and catcher are the minimum. The substitutes are ideally listed below, not to the right of the starters. And oftentimes these lineup cards will say substitute in the column on the right. And that's for you, the umpire, to write on as the game progresses. It's not to list the substitutes. Ineligible pitchers are noted as well, as I mentioned before. But this is where you note the substitutes. In the way I've written this up here, I've got number 4 coming in the 6th hole for number 10 in the top of the 4th. That's what the number sign 4, T4 means. Number 4, top of the 4th. And then in the second one, I've got a reentry of my starter later on. I've got number 1 coming in at the top of the 4th in the 7th hole for number 2. And then I have number 2 reentering in the bottom of the 6th. The backside of the lineup card is this nice blank canvas for you to use. Use it for taking notes. This is the way I take my notes. Different umpires do it a little bit different, but this is the way I do it. It works for me. I mark down who my pitchers are and the visits. And this is a major game. They're allowed 2 visits. On the 3rd, they need to be swapped out with a new pitcher. So all I have to do is note, do I have 1 or 2 visits? I want to note my catchers and the innings they caught. You also notice that I write down their names. I want to make sure I have a good rapport with my catchers. I call them by their name. I also have a starting catcher, my number 11, and then they re-entered his catcher in the top of the 5th. Remember there's pitcher substitution rules where there are limits to when catchers can go to pitch and when pitchers can go to catch. And so you need to stay up with these kinds of notes. Special pinch runners, I want to note those. New to this year, we talked about it, the new rules. Verbal base on balls can only happen once per player. So I'm going to start noting that on the back of my lineup cards as well. And I also keep the score by the half inning. there's possibly going to be some games who have to be continued. They can't be finished out because of weather. And if I've got my lineup card noted like this, and if there's a pause in the game and it needs to be continued at some other time, I need to make a note of, what the situation was, what inning it was, the runners on base. If I make that note on here as well, I can then hand this card off to the next umpire that may finish out the game, and they should be able to pick it up from where it was left off. And by the way, ejections and protest notes, you want to make notes of those if they happen. And by the way, for you first-year umpires, ejections should be very, very rare. So it doesn't happen a whole lot. So don't worry about you thinking that you're going to have a lot of ejections you need to stay up on. It's not going to happen. So that's the way I keep I manage the game through my notes on the back of the lineup card. Another important thing is making sure the pitchers get their warm-up pitches in the half inning in 1 minute or less. By rule, they're allowed a maximum of 8 warm-up pitches or 1 minute, whatever comes first. And so you can reduce the number of warm-up pitches if it's taking too long. And this really is a problem more in minors, where coaches want to get the team together and talk in a huddle between every half inning. It really can slow the game down. So if it's strictly followed, then you'll have no more than 12 minutes of total between inning warm-up time in a 6-inning game. Now think about this, in a 6-inning game, you got 6 changes of the half inning, right? So 12 minutes. 2 minutes may not seem like very long, but if it's happening every half inning, that's 24 minutes that you're not playing. And if it's 3 minutes, which 3 minutes may not seem that long, well, that's over half an hour of time where you're not playing over the course of a game. And especially for leagues who have time limits on games, you really want to help the teams get through a full 6-inning game by enforcing that 1 minute or 8 warm-up pitches, whatever comes first. So some tips on speeding up the half inning. As I mentioned, coaches like to talk to their teams, but encourage the coaches to talk to their team in the dugout. So if the team is going to hit, talk to the team in the dugout about how to hit better. Get the leadoff batter ready. That's the only person we need ready to rock and roll. You can talk to the rest of the guys while he's taking his first at bat. And substitutes, when you're on offense, they need to be announced when the sub comes to bat or is on base. So if it's a substitute runner, you don't enter substitutes on offense in advance of that person coming to bat. Now for the team going on defense, get that pitcher warming up with a properly equipped player or an adult ASAP. I'm glad to be able to add adult to this. So now remember, adults can warm up, or I shouldn't say adults, coaches, because the coaches are allowed to be on the field. An adult coach can warm up the pitcher. The adult does not need to be wearing a catcher's helmet, but a player does need to be wearing a catcher's helmet. Minimize the team huddle, get them on the field. And substitutes when you go on defense, they're entered before the first pitch. So let the umpire know your subs when the pitcher's early in their warmups. Don't wait until the 8th warm-up pitch is thrown before you come to tell the umpire about the defensive subs. Now, adults on the field, only one manager and 2 coaches in majors, or in minors, you can have 3 coaches. They're allowed to be on the field or in the dugout. At least one adult needs to be in the dugout at all times. And managers and coaches must stay in the dugout while their team is on defense. When they're on offense, you can have a base coach, one on first, one on second, or one on third, one on first, but you have to have an adult in the dugout as well. And the one exception is T-ball and minors. Managers and coaches may be on the field for instructional purposes. The way I enforce this when I umpire is I allow one coach to be on the field within an arm's length of the dugout gate. They don't need to be all over the field. We don't need to have a whole bunch of coaches on the field. And they certainly cannot be sitting on a bucket. No buckets are ever allowed on a Little League field. So those are my tips on game management and keeping the game moving. Mark?
Yeah, so we just have some resources that are available online. First of all, highly recommend the new Rulebook app, and it is free on both Google Play and the Apple App Store. Just do a quick search, Little League Rulebook or Little League Rules. It'll come up. You can download it for free. And once you've downloaded it, will get automatically updated each year with the new rules. And Little League has minimized the printing of paper rule books. They are still available if you're an old-fashioned, I need to be able to turn pages kind of guy. Those are available, but they don't come in bulk like they used to. The Little League website, littleleague.org, has a bunch of stuff there. There's an umpire tab, and there's also a thing called the umpire registry, which really is a whole website specially for the Little League umpire, and you can join the Little League registry. There's also a resource on there for umpires to do their background check, and it can actually be made available to multiple leagues. If you umpire for multiple leagues, there is a small charge for that, $5 to be background checked for multiple leagues on that. But if you're just going to be in one league, make sure adults have that background check done. There's also some recommended places to get umpire gear. The official Little League stuff is on Shop Little League. Honig's is a longtime provider of umpire equipment. Jerry Davis is run by former Major League umpire Jerry Davis, who has a special relationship with Little League. And if you put in there is a discount code of LL10 for 10% off at Jerry Davis. So, and Umpatire is another place you can go, but just search for things. The District 44 website has a few things about umpiring in the local area, and we have links to some of our resources, and also instructions about if you want to become a redshirt umpire, like Jim and me and others. We want to recognize excellence in umpiring and excellence in volunteering. Another thing to be aware of is that some of our leagues are using an online scheduling program called Arbiter. So check with your league UIC and see if you need to be on Arbiter so that you can get scheduled for these games.
Hey,
At this point, we're going to
Hey,
stop
Mark.
sharing the screen. Yes, go ahead, Jim.
We got a bunch of questions about umpire gear. So what gear should I get as a youth umpire? Echoed a few times. And will gear be provided by the league? The first person you want to talk to is your umpire in chief of your league. And they should be able to get you started. Most leagues, or all leagues, I believe, have a pool of umpire gear, chest protectors, shin guards, face masks. They should be able to provide you with a shirt and a hat. And then things like an indicator, a brush, ball bags. It's a pretty long list of things that, especially if you're going to work the plate, of things that you're going to want to need. Talk to your umpire in chief. Another thing you can do is go to a place like jerrydavis.com or umpatire.com and look at what they have in the starter kits. And you'll see the entire list of things that they recommend for the starter kit. And it's all the things that I just mentioned and probably a few others that I've missed.
Yeah. So for youth umpires and even adults, there should be that shared set of equipment that Jim talked about. And just know that the guy on the previous game probably wore that chest protector. It might get a little sweaty, but there may be other ones. But if you're a committed volunteer and you want to be doing this for a while, it's a good chance to invest in your own gear. Then who has worn it. Your male umpires behind the plate are also going to need a cup. We also recommend a dangling throat protector for your mask to protect your neck, and a serious umpire would invest in some plate shoes that are going to have a steel instep protector and a toe plate that's going to protect you from balls in the dirt. Because I've been hit on my plate shoes and they're worth every penny of what I paid for them. Another option is now plate umpires are starting to wear a helmet, almost like a batter's helmet underneath their mask. And I invested in one of those this year as hope to prevent concussions, because that's a real risk that you have back there. But the big answer is your gear should be supplied by your league. And so if you're not sure who your UIC is, it should be on the website, or just ask around, ask the president, they can point you to that. Some leagues just have an umpire scheduler, or you can talk to the president and get pointed in the right direction.
Mark, I'm going to just say one more thing about the umpire registry. I actually went on there earlier today, just to get familiar with what was on there. They have a lot of great webinars that are posted on there. And if you haven't been able to make it out to one of our clinics, look for the webinar on the two-person field mechanics. It covers lots that we've covered in the clinics we've been running. And you get Mark Bernstein, who is the Western Region umpire in chief, who's walking you through all this. He's a fantastic umpire. And so look for that. If you're not able to make it to one of our clinics, or haven't been able to and won't be able to make it out tomorrow, go to the umpire registry and look for the two-man umpire mechanics, the webinar for that.
Yeah, great tip. So Jim, if you could stop sharing the screen and we'll bring everybody up there. This concludes our presentation, and we're going to